Hi everyone, I'm Alistair Fraser. I'm a geography lecturer in Maynooth University, a small university close to Dublin in Ireland, and I'm hosting today's panel session, which is part of the Dancecult conference. This is a re-recording because we tried to do it on the day and it didn't work, so we've managed to get back together to try and do it now. And the session is all about Brian Belle-Fortune's amazing book, All Crew Must Big Up, Journeys Through the Jungle Drum and Bass Culture, which I've got here. We will talk about the book and Brian in a bit, but first let me introduce our panel members. First of all, we've got Chris Christodoulou. Is a course leader of the BA in Contemporary Media Practice at the University of Westminster in London. He's published work on the impact of accelerated culture on global youth scenes and music-led subcultures, and carried out his PhD thesis, Renegade Hardware, Speed, Technology and Cultural Practice in Drum and Bass Music. It's a great title for a thesis, Chris. Between 2005 and 2009. He's also interested in fan cultures based on the collecting of obsolete and residual electronic media. And I should probably chat with you about my tape packs, old tape packs.
Got a bit of a collection myself, absolutely.
We've also got, how are you, Chris? You all right?
All good, Alistair, absolutely, great. Glad to be here, very happy to be here. I'm very honoured to be here.
We've also got DJ Fly. Fly has been at the forefront of drum and bass for years. She was the first woman to host the National Drum and Bass Show, The Next Chapter, on BBC Radio 1 Extra. Among many achievements, she has held residencies at Metalheads and Swerve, produced tunes with Breakage, released music on 31, started her own label, Play Music, and has been nominated for a DJ Mag Best of British Award. Crucially, she's also the co-founder of EQ50, a collective of women addressing inequality and representation in dance music. In 2020, the collective launched the first ever drum and bass mentorship program for women and non-binary people. Flight is also a producer for the Prison Radio Association, don't know how you find the time, which is a multi-award winning charity which runs the world's only national station for prisoners and aims to reduce reoffending through the power of radio. Finally, in 2020, Flight produced the Windrush Stories podcast series and documentary, which garnered widespread acclaim for its beautiful exploration of the Caribbean experience in Britain. Windrush Stories was recently nominated at the British Podcast Awards 2021, and a second series is due later in the year. Flight, how are you?
I'm okay. It's actually out now. We've been publishing a couple of episodes per week throughout October for Black History Month.
Wow.
So they should all be out by the time people watch this back, I think.
Brilliant achievement. Yeah.
Thank you. Bit of a slog.
We've also got, we're very lucky to have here Sarah Groove Connection. Sarah, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Battling on through a cough.
Battling on with
really good. Yeah.
Sarah's played a huge part in the story of drum and bass. She set up the Groove Connection Management Agency in 1990, which was the first agency solely for DJs. She was the promoter of the seminal drum and bass night Speed in 1994 with Fabio and DJ Bookham. And since 95, she's been the co-owner of Creative Source Records with Fabio. She's also the promoter of Swerve Drum and Bass Club Night from 96 to present day. So Sarah, we're very glad that you're here.
Thanks.
Our guest of honor really is Brian Belle-Fortune. Hi, Brian.
Hello, pleased to be here. Thank you so much for organising this all. Yeah,
it's fantastic to have you here. Just to say, since graduating from Sussex University in '94, Brian conceived and co-produced One in the Jungle, Britain's first national jungle programme for BBC Radio 1. A huge, everybody from that generation knows that show and can remember it so clearly. His TV credits on BBC South, Channel 4 and MTV, where he specialised in underground youth culture, particularly jungle. He was label manager for DJ Ron's London Something Records. He's played on London pirate radio stations, Rude FM, Rude Awakening, and as DJ Zion. Is that right?
That's the one.
His book, All Crew Must Big Up, was published in 1999. It quickly went out of print and became cult reading. A revised version was published in 2004. It's been translated into Russian and Italian. And used copies, like mine, sell on Amazon.com for $244. And a new copy is a steal at $667. In between all these achievements, Brian was an intensive care nurse at Great Ormond Street for children. He lives in Tottenham, London, and is currently writing another book about his nursing experiences. So this is our panel. Let me just say a few quick words. I organised this session with Chris to be part of the Dancecult conference. Chris and I have both written about drum and bass and Dancecult over the last few years. And our thinking for today was that we needed some time to reflect on Brian's book. It's such an amazing piece of work. Its impact has been huge, I think. It forms a bedrock for what we need to refer to as drum and bass studies, just like there's a hip hop studies and jazz studies and so on. And so this book, I think, deserves attention and praise. And that's what we'll do today. So we'll begin with each panel member saying a few words, beginning with Chris, and then Flight, and then Sarah. And then next we'll turn it over to Brian to comment, and we'll keep it going from there. So Chris, speak to us.
Alistair, can I just ask you one thing? Because you showed your copy there, and I presume you've got that copy as well.
I don't. Oh, look at this. Everybody show their copy.
Mate, right. So
mine's in the other room.
Mine's in two different buildings.
Mine's in the other room. I do have that copy that Brian's holding up.
Have this copy, yeah.
Are there 3 or 2?
There's actually 4.
Okay, because I know that I've lost one, but I didn't know there were 4.
Brian, is there a spiral version as well? A spiral bound version, the first, right?
Yeah. So the first one we brought out in I think it was spring '99. That would have been the spiral version. And then there was the copy that Alistair held up. That was December '99. And then in 2003 there was this beauty.
Okay.
So is that
so it's the spiral that I'm missing then, I believe.
Yeah. Well, there are only ever 100 of those.
Wow.
Yeah, I haven't seen very many people who have those.
They're collector items then. Yeah.
Seriously, I remember seeing them in a record shop in Soho, and I can't remember which one, but yes, I remember seeing the spine. I unfortunately didn't buy one at the time. I'm kicking myself, but I bought all versions since, and the digital version as well. So there are multiple versions out there. So
yeah.
So the digital versions happened, yeah, the audiobook and everything.
Well, this is coming up next. So I mean, I've actually just finished reading my part of the audiobook.
Okay.
Navi's going to do his narration down. Because we've already got yours as well, Sarah. So it's all just going to be pushed. Yeah, and Chris and Natalie. Yeah, it's all.
No, I wasn't sure what happened with that after during lockdown and everything. I thought maybe you couldn't do it. Yeah.
Yeah, everything slowed down for lockdown, so it's just one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Shall I respond to your question, Alistair? I'll probably go.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, it was just really for me. I've known Brian for some time. I'm introduced by a mutual friend, JB, who's a photographer and done lots of work at D&B events, and so I've known Brian for over a decade, really. But it's in terms of the book, yeah, my history of the book really goes back certainly to that first version that you showed up, that you presented. And I mean, what was interesting to me, and what's always been interesting about Brian's book, and what makes it pretty unique, I think, is that, you know, for a scene and for a kind of demographic who are often accused of being not readers, you know, people who are not sort of very literate, Brian's book is kind of unique, really, in terms of books about dance culture, in that it's kind of integrated into the scene itself. And I know this from sort of having gone out with Brian, and just people flocking to Brian saying, "You wrote the book, didn't you? You wrote All Crews." So that's really quite interesting. That's something unique about All Crews that I think is now. I mean, it was different 20 years ago. I think now it's pretty common to see books on house music and dance culture more generally. But Brian's book, from my point of view, is actually quite unique in that respect, in that people within the scene, and let's call it the scene, we could be talking internationally, we could be talking in more local terms, I guess, they know the book. The book is sort of common knowledge within our world, and I think that's pretty unique, and that's pretty interesting. And also the style of writing, I think, is a big part of it, the kind of gonzo type journalism that Brian's kind of talking about the music. He's a fan, he's involved, but he's also somebody who's slightly outside, slightly removed as well, who can look at things from a kind of a journalist's point of view. So that's another key to the success of the book, I think.
That's really interesting. I mean, there are other books in drum and bass now, aren't there? There've been a few more, and recently there's been a few more released. And Yeah, I think what makes
State of
Brian
play.
so important was just the moment that it came out, and it's topped off the 90s, if you like.
For sure.
You know, the 90s were so important for, obviously, for this music, and then here at the end of the decade was this piece that was saying, well, that's just what happened in that decade.
Well, Martin James's book had just come out before All Crews. A State of Bass is also a really great book, but it was written from the perspective of really a kind of a journalist stroke academic who was really into this and clearly a fan of the music. But Brian was sort of involved, and maybe because being in London and being kind of connected to the scene in that way, and having been involved with kind of One in the Jungle and also as a DJ, I think that gave Brian a kind of a unique position. Really, people connected to, and people who were into the music, they understood what Brian was talking about, and so gave that, I think, that text special attention. Really.
Yeah. And I think what was there,
relaxed writing to it as well, isn't there? There's the relaxed writing style.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Sarah, I cut across you.
No, what I thought was unique about Brian's thing is obviously Brian came up with the idea to almost commentate on the scene at a time when we were so immersed in it that it was traveling at thousands of miles an hour. It was so crazy. There was so much energy. It was like we were just, I think people properly immersed in it. We didn't have time to even look up and really realize exactly what was going on. And then I think Brian came and he took time to try and give a very all-rounder perspective, but obviously also with a lot of his personality coming across, you know, so obviously showing that he was a raver and loving it, and obviously linked to certain angles and aspects of the scene. So he had his experience with you know, DJ Ron. I don't exactly know the years of all that, but he was the first person to come in and start almost like just giving us a snapshot view of exactly what was happening at that time. You know, and he did go to all the different crews and he did give people their own voice. So that's why it's almost like a historical capture of like that energy at the time. Everyone so excited about, you know, their angle and what they were inputting. And at the time, to be honest, when Brian first called, we were like, sorry, we're too busy. It's like, there's no time for this. You know, what do you mean you're sort of writing about the scene, you know? So it was kind of like, I think everyone got caught up and then realized, you know, that he was literally trying to take it from everyone's perspective and give a very rounded view of it. You know, I still think there's a lot of in-depth stuff that's still maybe not being touched on, and a whole load of stuff that's been completely omitted. But Brian's book, for me, when I sit there and read through it, it gave a very realistic take. You know, you get real impression of different characters in the scene, different people. And everyone's so into their own thing, but there is a cohesion with it all, you know, and it did capture just that energy and how explosive and how it was spreading even by 1998, you know. I mean, that was 10 years into the scene, but he captured a real moment there. Yeah.
I think, that's definitely what makes it unique. Like, it's authentic, you know, like Brian was obviously involved, as Sarah said, like he actually went and spoke to the people involved, gave them a platform to speak, and documented it. And I think that's what really resonates with people, you know. I mean, there is space for the more academic style book that Chris mentioned earlier, but to get a real sense, you need somebody like Brian, or any of us really, that are fully involved and can and has access to people and isn't just going to cover like similar topics that we've seen written about time and time again, you know.
Yeah, and also a lot of it wasn't documented digitally. You know, I've been working my guts out with this. Well, at some point people might realize, you know, really how the whole thing really emerged at the start, you know, and it's kind of like, obviously certain people do get their story more than others, you know, and it's just, so you miss stuff, you know, and I think there's space for everybody. There's so much interesting stuff that happened at the beginning of the scene. And, you know, if you weren't there before, then obviously you can only give your impression of when you stepped in. Yeah. So there is still stuff missing, and it's very important stuff. And I think there's enough space for everybody to get their creativity, to get their dues, to be respected. You know, everyone played a part, and this, it's still not totally cohesive, but I think Brian's book goes much further towards giving a very fair view of exactly what happened and how organic it was and how it grew and how it burst, you know. It wasn't containable. It just spread like wildfire. And that's the thing. And it was also pre-digital, pre-computer.
Yeah.
You know, I would like to say to you, Brian, there's one bit where you actually say to me that I took my computer. No, I didn't. It was all handwritten notes. There was no such thing as a computer then. Yeah. It was my little file, my phone books. There was no computer involved. Yeah. It wasn't until I moved into the Brixton office and then maybe 3 years in, I got my first Mac. Yeah. Everything was manual. So, you know, there are little things in the book that I'd say, well, I'm not sure where that line came from, but it's a very good, fair representation and gives everyone their proper platform. And I believe that.
Sarah, when you say that there weren't, are you talking about the early days of Groove Connection where there weren't, you know, before kind of using kind of word processing and is that what you're
referring to? Yes, no mobile phones, no computers.
Sure.
Like people really don't understand. I had 5 phone lines. I had to, and they rang non-stop. Yeah. Then I'd get 5 DJs phoning in to have a ego pep talk I was missing gigs because they're all coming through on phone lines. We didn't even have faxes. You know, I've got cupboards of paperwork, reams of showing like how all the clubs built up. Each club as they came onto the circuit, you know, the very first club nights outside of London. I've got it all.
It sounds like you need to write a book as well.
Well, that's what I am. I'm going to write a book. That's kind of, I'm formulating it already. Yeah.
Brilliant. Can I just pick up on something that you were saying just about the way the music kind of progressed and the scene progressed, and it connects a lot of my interest really around the, you know, accelerated culture and the sense that culture is speeding up. And what was interesting about drum and bass, and especially in the kind of the way it cut across sort of rave culture and then into this sort of jungle drum and bass culture as the 90s went along. It did move so rapidly, and it seemed to sort of move faster than people could capture and document, you know, the scene in that world. The weird thing now is the way that things are sort of captured almost as they happen, because you've got the internet and you've got social media and online culture. But at the time, unless you were there and sort of involved in that world, you could kind of miss it. So it was really, I mean, that's why Brian's book, I think, sort of played quite an important role. And I mean, some of the things that you were saying about lots of content, you know, not being in there, but it's very hard to kind of, I guess, you know, retain everything. So, you know, I get this is where Brian, you know, could probably say a bit about his decision making in terms of what to include, what not to include, you know, how involved, you know. Brian, I always wanted to ask you just about your methodology, and you kind of, did you write all crews in a kind of a brief burst of activity, or did it take time? Was it something that took you know, kind of months and even longer?
It took months and months. Lots of different drafts, lots of stuff in the end that didn't quite fit, so it wasn't included. Methodology wise, I kind of what I did was I got several bits of A4 paper and put a heading at the top of them. So like raves, promoters, DJs, MC, booking agents, and then taped all of those A4 bits together. So I had, we called it the wallpaper. It must have been about 6 foot long. People would come round to my house here in Tottenham, and we'd talk obviously about what their specialist area was, but then they'd come over to the wallpaper and they'd be looking at different headings, and then that would then be a springboard for a conversation about that.
That's amazing.
And so that's why you sort of get people who are DJs, but then talking about something that's not sort of centered around DJs or dub plates. Might be to do with security or the scene as a whole, or drugs, but it made it quite organized whilst being flexible at the same time.
Right.
And realistic and edgy, yeah, which was really what was going on different levels all the way through. Yeah.
I mean, I was very careful of not, I'd say, putting words into people's mouth, not sort of changing people's speech so it was nice and grammatically correct, or sort of just taking a bit of a sheen off it. I think I just wanted to have people as they were.
And it's very heavy in quotes. So you're hearing from the actual people who were taking part in all these things, and that's so important in a book. You don't want too much of the author, and unless, okay, in an academic book, fair enough, but in a book of this nature, where you're trying to sort of reflect the scene, you want to hear people. You want to hear people speak, and you get that in this book so nicely. And I think that's what makes it so powerful for someone like me, who's sort of detached from, not in London, and not sort of connected and everything, but you get these voices coming through. I've used interviews online, and like whenever DJs have been interviewed, you try and pay particular attention, see what it is that they're saying about their lives, and you get that from this book as well. And again, this is at a time when there was very little else available. I mean, the media back then, what was it? It was Eternity, Knowledge Mag, a little bit. Even then, Knowledge wasn't until a little bit later, was it?
No, Knowledge was a little bit later. It was Eternity magazine. That was the first
Atmosphere as well.
Atmosphere, yeah. They were the sort, and then Knowledge came a little bit later.
And then nothing else. I mean, there was no, until one in the Jungle.
Mix Mag was there quite early.
Mix Mag,
but they were more focused on the mixing sort of angle, and then suddenly got a little wind of kind of drum and bass.
But there was no TV. Channel 4 didn't pay attention to it. BBC 2 didn't pay attention to it.
No, Channel 4 there was.
Yeah, there were a couple of odd documentaries in the mid-90s.
Little bits. Yeah. Like on a sort of regular, like there was, I think.
I did Dance Energy.
For something regular, wasn't it?
Dance Energy.
More attention.
Normski, yeah.
Normski did that Dance Energy thing,
I used to watch that all the time.
And I went onto that with Fabio and Groove and DJ Rap. That was in 1989 or 90.
Wow.
So, and that's funny when you look back at the video of that. And then
you still got it?
Yes. Not transferred to a digital format. I've got everything.
I was about to go to scour YouTube.
Yeah. So this is the thing. People use Google as their Wikipedia or their whatever, to find out, no, there's a lot missing. So I don't mind people jumping on and wanting to, promote their angle, but you've got to, if you want to do it properly, and if you are a historian, or if you are actually really interested in that whole culture and what really happened, there's stuff missing a lot. But so then obviously, dance, I think that was obviously ahead of its time, that whole Dance Energy thing. It was too soon. I think Hitman and Her was dying a little bit, and they were trying to look for something that would like come through and replace it, and it was still too early for dance music for the normal, like 30 years behind population.
Yeah. Well, there was the ITV had a late night for a few years. It was a BPM with Dave Durrell. I remember that was kind of coming back from early going out into my early days of raving, and that would be on just at that time at 3 a.m. or something like that. But I just wanted to pick up something that you were saying, kind of Sarah, about kind of Mix Mag and the more, I guess, the more rave-oriented publications like kind of ATM and Knowledge Magazine and Eternity. I think there was a little bit of a divide, certainly early on. I mean, Mix Mag seemed not to want to cover early jungle at all. There seemed to be a little bit of they do like there'd be a review in the back when Mix Mag had this sort of, when it was like the Bible of dance music, when it was less a kind of a magazine and more a kind of a, if you were a DJ, if you were a connoisseur, because it was a DMC publication. It had that vibe to it, that professional vibe to it. But you'd get the odd review of a guy called Gerald maybe, or Bookham, right at the back, and it'd be a few lines. Generally, they ignored jungle, I think, really.
No.
There was a real divide. It's this kind of music that urban kids listen to, Council Estate kids. We don't really want to touch that. We're about the house scene, the club scene, more upwardly mobile and aspirational. That's kind of music that's faddish. It's for inner city kids. It won't be around very long. And I'm reading, and partly some of the content from Brian's book and sort of Goldie's attempt to try and break through and sign to London Records, and it was frustrating for a lot of people and saying, look, we've got this amazing music, it's British, it's not an import directly from America. Yes, massively influenced by hip hop, techno, reggae and house, but we have Black British music, and yet the sort of British publications, certainly the ones established, not the smaller rave publications, club culture, seem not to want to pick up.
Yeah, but the whole of club culture was like that.
Sure.
And to be perfectly honest, I decided from very early on that my whole emphasis was going to be with the black DJs. That was my thing. That wasn't just something that happened. That was my conscious decision, because I looked at the music business. I saw how it worked, and I thought that it was always unfair. I grew up obsessed with Motown and stuff like that. I looked and I saw how those people had been treated and weren't paid. You know, to me, from the very beginning, the rave scene was an alternative music business. It wasn't the intention to try and aspire to break through with them. I was offered chances to break through with them before I set up Groove Connection. Yeah. I could have been Ginger Spice. Yeah. I turned it down. Yeah. Simon Fuller asked me to be Ginger Spice.
Wow. That's amazing information.
Because we were raving. It was a thing. And, he said to me, Sarah, okay, you don't like being in, because I was working at Chris Morrison organisation, just as a runner, kind of running around, little accounts manager, looking through touring accounts and stuff, raving the whole time outside that and wondering, what can I do here? And he said to me, Sarah, you're on the wrong side of it. You should be I'm doing this, a girl band, do you want to join it? Is that what you want to do? And I was like, no, I'm in the underground. Like, I love raving. This is what I want to do. I think there's so much, it really excited me. And actually Trenton worked in the same office. Right. I didn't realise till later he was working with Danny D, Dancing Danny D, who made Acid and all that. So we were closer to people, that then later on come together. But no, I knew that my heart was just taken with the rave scene. I couldn't stop raving. And, it was like people knew that there was this energy, and it wasn't just, oh, let's just get on it and go wild. There was a lot of really creative people that just had the exact same thing at the same time. It just clicked for a lot of us, and I just knew that was what I had to do. It was the only thing I believed in and could put passion into.
So. And Brian, it seems as if what you did in the book was also there's a sense of urgency from you that you had to do this. There was like a necessity that you would have regretted if you hadn't pushed through this. I mean, how many years were you working on that book project before it finally came to you actually had the hard copy?
Oh God, but it wasn't that long. 18 months to 2 years. Wow. And there was a sense of urgency because I full of the ravers energy type thing, but wanted to. I mean, you have to think. I was actually a fan, so me being able to speak to a lot of people, I was sort of almost at the sort of starstruck kind of level, but also wanting to get their story out. It wasn't my story; it was their stories.
And just we're running out of time, so just also, Brian. I mean, if you picture yourself back then, and could you have seen yourself still talking about the book 20 years time, that it would still have this incredible life? And how do you feel about the fact that 20 years on, it's still, I think, as essential as it was back then?
I met a lot of people back then who were passionate about it, whether it's pirate radios or they were just passionate. And I'm not surprised in a way. I am surprised because I mean it's an amazing achievement, especially for a first book. That was initially self-published, but we had to deal with a lot of people back then who were sort of saying, "Oh, how long is this fad going to last anyway?" But I knew in my bones that this was very important music, and I went to see Andy C at Wembley Arena on Saturday, and it was almost like, see, this is what I was talking about. This is, it's just proof of the pudding, essentially. But even, I mean, it reminded me of World Dance, actually. I hadn't seen that kind of scenario with a huge space and one DJ. But in a way, I'm not surprised that we're still here.
Yeah. Well, maybe just get some final words from everybody, and then I think we'll sign off. Flight, you want to say a few final words, or?
I'll just echo what Brian's just said, really, like just how this music has always been doubted, and there's always been naysayers and people trying to call it a fad and how it wouldn't last. And now look, jungle is huge again. It's really trendy among young people. We're yet to see how long this phase will last, but the underground will always be here. We'll always be here, passionate about the music, loving it, pushing it forward. There will always be new people coming in, keeping it fresh. And yeah, we're here to stay.
Good. Sarah, final words?
Yeah, no, it's here to stay. It was always here to stay. It was never going anywhere. You know, it is a global dance revolution. It's been hijacked in certain corners and molded. But, you know, my daughter's now 20 at Goldsmith. She's been raving for the last 4 years. And that's Fabio's daughter as well. You know, and basically they're into it as much as we are. The energy's as intense.
Yeah.
They love it. There's a whole new load of new music coming through from like kids like in the 16, 17-year-olds. You know, it is amazing. So it's not going anywhere.
Good. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Chris, do you want to...
very quickly that a lot of people that I've known throughout the years, they have remained young, you know, their energy is, they've got so much young and youthful energy still there. So I mean, you know, I'm 60, and loving. You know, I kind of see this with drum and bass people. So they all have got this still youthful energy, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm 43 and still waiting to grow up, so I don't know about anyone else. But as Flight was saying, really, in terms of the music's kind of underground identity, I think that's something that's really strong. It's a really strong part of how people feel connected to the music, and it's in that sort of space, that kind of tempo, 170 BPM, where nothing else can really encroach. So from just a kind of like a structural, formal sort of point of view, it's got its own space, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I think despite people frequently saying, almost kind of wanting it to die, it just maintains underground energy and say, right, well, we're going to die. You know, we'll see about that. You know,
I keep thinking one day we're going to run out of bass lines, but nah, it's just not going to happen, is it? Listen, we should call it a day before we get cut off. Thank you very much to DJ Fly, and to Sarah Groove Correction, to Chris, Christodoulou, and then of course to Brian Belle-Fortune. It's been a real pleasure and a real privilege to be in this space with all of you, and thank you very, very much. I hope to see you again soon.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well.
Big up Brian.
Big up Brian.
For certain, yeah.